Hello everyone, thanks for choosing to watch this video. This is Remy and I'm glad to meet you all here. We are here to understand and learn what are exceptions, how do they differ from errors, and how to handle them so that the resources are handled properly. Fine, let's move on to the topic. You can see two different images on the screen, both representing a dishwasher. You might be wondering what's the use of showing this image now. Let's try to understand the scenario that's presented here. Now, both the picture tells us that the machines have run into some kind of a problem and what it could be. The problem here is that the machine cannot drain the water after using it. The machine in the first picture cannot handle the problem, and as a result, you can see the water comes out of it and it's a huge mess. Technically speaking, it's a system crash. Whereas, let's see the machine that's in the second picture. It can easily identify the problem and inform the user about the issue through an error code. That's the error code you can see here. As a result, the system goes into a stop mode instead of in crash mode. The above scenario can give you a clear idea about what is an exception and how it is different from an error. Exceptions are erroneous or unexpected situations that can be handled by the system so that the system does not crash and thereby makes your program fault tolerant and efficient. Whereas error is something that most of us or most of the time you cannot handle it. Exception was meant to give you an opportunity to do something with it, like trying something else, or you just write it to the log so that someone can handle it. Okay. You can have a general idea about an exception in a programmer point of view. An exception is an object that describes an unusual or erroneous situation. All these exceptions can be thrown out of the program and may be caught or handled by another part of a program if at all you want to do it. Now let's move on to the programming part and let's learn how to handle these exceptions in C++. C++, being an object-oriented program, gives us a perfect structure to handle these exceptions. So the program can be split into two blocks of code, namely a block called as try and another block called as catch. So both these blocks can be in the same program or it could be in a different program so that it can be handled in a proper way. The try block will hold all the set of codes which can have some exception, and if any exception is identified, it could be thrown out of the try block where it will be caught by a suitable catch block, and the catch block can handle it in such a way that the program is made efficient. So you can see a set of codes here and we can expect some sort of exceptions here. So all these codes will be put inside a try block, and if at all any exception occurs, we might expect something to occur here. If at all an exception occurs, it could be thrown out of this try block and it could be caught by a suitable catch block where it can be handled properly. Now too much of speaking is done here, so let's move into the programming mode and let's try to understand program step by step. So in the next part of the same video, we can see a small example program and understand how to handle these exceptions in a proper way. Then we will try to understand what do you mean by nested catch on try blocks and what is the use of that. And finally, we will end the video by giving a small program on multiple catch blocks and what if we have multiple catch blocks, how it could be handled properly. Okay, now let's start with the program. Being a C++ program, we will include the headers first. So we'll include IOStream, then we can make use of a namespace. That's cool. Then we will start with the main function. Yeah, it's done. Now since we are going to handle some exceptions, we need the help of two different blocks as I told you previously. So one is the try block and one is the catch block. So we have created the structure for it. Yeah, it's fine. Now let's stop for a moment and try to understand the objective of this program. We're going to get two different numbers from the user Let's name it as the numerator as well as the denominator. Now after the user enter the values, we are going to divide the numerator divided by the denominator, and we are going to find out the quotient value. Now since this is a dividing operation, what if the denominator value is 0? Now the system couldn't understand, or it couldn't divide a value or numerator value by 0, because the outcome of this will be infinite. So this is a kind of exception for us, and let's see how to handle this exception. So first of all, let's get the values from the user. We'll try or enter two values. Okay, we are done. Using cin statement, we'll get two values. One is the numerator, second one will be the denominator. Now since we are going to check whether the denominator is equivalent to 0 or not, that causes an exception, we need the help of an if conditional statement. So we will create a structure for that first. So what if the denominator is equivalent to 0? So if that is the case, we have a set of code here. Or what if it is not equivalent to 0, we have another set of code. So let's try to fill up this part first, the else part. So what if it is not equal to 0? So then we are good to go. So we will give the output to the user as it is meant to be. The quotient is, so this will be numerator divided by the denominator value. So that will give a proper output to the user. Now what if the denominator value is 0? So this is where our exception occurs. So we are going to throw this value of d that has caused this exception out of the try block. Now how does the compiler manage it? So once we throw this value out of the try block, it will go out of the try block and it will be in search of a suitable catch block. Since we are throwing an integer value out, we will create a suitable catch block which has got one of its argument as an integer, so that it can easily catch the exception that has been thrown out. Now this integer variable e will be holding the value that is thrown by the user out of the try block. So this is how we handle the exception. We say exception has occurred, fine, and it's because of the value, right? Value of d. So we will put denominator is, and we will print the value of d here. It's not d, sorry, it's e, because e is the variable that receives the value of d. So in this or typical type of exception, we call it as divide by 0 here, so we can just inform the user about it. Fine. I hope it's done. We will return the main function. It's good. Let's check the output for this. So we'll give the compilation code. The program's name is t1.cpp. Oops. It says there is no. Okay, let me check. Yeah, it should be inside this folder. Fine. Okay. Yeah, it has compiled properly. We don't have any errors here. Let us try to get the output of this program. So it's asking us to enter two values. Let me put 12 and 4. So it says the quotient is 3. 12 divided by 4 is 3. Let's try to understand the next part of the output, where if we give one value as 12 and another value as 0, so the denominator is 0. So it says that the exception has occurred and the denominator is 0, and it's a divide by 0 error. See, exactly when the value of d is 0 here, it will be thrown out, and this part of the program will be left unhandled, and it will move to the catch block directly. And inside the catch block, it will be handled perfectly. As we have given the command as we are just displaying the value, exception has occurred, denominator is 0, and divide by 0 error. So that's fine. Now what if we have a set of code after this throw statement? Let's check how the output differs. Set of codes after throw. Let me put it like this. Okay, close the line. Go back to the compiler. Yeah. Okay, it's good compilation. No issues with that. Fine, let me enter two values. Let me put it as 50 and 0. So what happens? The numerator value is 50 and the denominator is 0. So this condition is going to be matched and it is supposed to throw the value of 0. It has thrown, but see, it does not execute this value. So the meaning of this is once an exception occurs, it will be directly thrown out of this try block and it does not come back to the next line of the throw statement. So we have to be really careful when we are dealing with exceptions, and if at all an exception has occurred, we have to handle it in a proper way so that the program shuts down properly. Okay, let's start with a new program. The main objective of this program is to create an array and to enter values inside the array. So once the values are entered, we can request the user to give us a position so that based on the position requested by the user, we can give him the value that is present inside that current position. Now, what if the user is requesting us a position that is not within the limits of the array? So what I exactly mean is that let us assume the total array is limited to 5. So we have the locations 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So the total count is 5. What if the user is requesting us to retrieve a value that is in position 10, which is exactly not inside the array's limit? So that is an exception for us. So how are we going to handle this exception? Let's see in this program. So as usual, we create a try block, and inside your try block, you create the array and ask the user to enter the values for the array. So by the end of this code, the array will be full. Now the user is requesting us a location from where we have to retrieve the value from the array and give it to the user. So that will be done with this set of code. Now what if the user has given us a position or a location which is not within the array's limit? So what if the position given by the user is negative? So I value should be less than 0. That represents it's a negative value. Or what if the user is requesting for a position that is greater than the array's limit? So if such thing happens inside the program, so it is an exception. So we will be throwing that exception location out of this try block. So once it is thrown, it will be caught by the catch block, and where we can inform the user that an exception has occurred. You are trying to access a location that is not within the array's limit. So technically speaking, this type of exception, we call it as array out of bounds exception. What if the user is trying to give us a location that is within the array's limit? So in such a case, this if condition will not work and we will directly move into the else part where we can retrieve the value from the array and print it to the output. So let's see how this program works with the help of the output screen. So let's compile it. So the program's name is 19_2. Fine. Yeah, it's good. There is no compilation errors. We'll directly go into the execution part. Okay, let's assume we have 5 elements in the array and let's give some values for them: 20, 36, 54, then 3 and 65. Okay, fine. So we have 5 elements listed inside the array. So one is 20, 36, 54, 3 and 65. So as you know, the array's location starts from 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So since we have 5 elements, we stop with 4. Now we are asking the user to enter the array location to display the value. So let's assume he gives us a location 3. So obviously location 3 is 0, 1, 2 and 3. So it retrieves the value 3. We'll go for another output. Okay. Let me give 5 values: 10, 25, 36 and 45. Okay. Now we'll ask the user to enter the location. Let's assume he gives us a location 9, which is out of the bounds of this array. Now what happens? Now exception is thrown saying that exception has occurred, array out of bounds, and since you're trying to access a location 8 which is not within the array's limit, the exception has thrown. So that's how it works. So user will enter a location value here if the location value is not within the array's limit, we are going to find out that exception and throw it out of this try block, where it will be perfectly caught over here and it is handled. That's good. The same thing occurs if the user gives a negative value, and it's self-explanatory. You can try it on your own. Now we'll move into the second part of the program. What if we have multiple catch blocks, and how does it work, whether it will work sequentially or whether it will skip certain catch blocks? So let's see with the help of the similar program. So in this program we have defined two variables. One variable is v1, which is of integer in nature, and the second variable is k, which is of string in nature, and we have assigned a value hello buddy to this variable k. And also we request the user to enter a value for v1. Now inside the try block, we'll check what is the value of v1, whether it is 0 or it is less than 0, or if it is not less than 0, or if it is not equal to 0, then we will check whether it is less than 5, or what if it is greater than 5. So in the first case, if it is equivalent to 0, we will throw the value of v1. In the second case, if it is less than 0, we are not going to throw a value of v1. Instead, we throw a single character. Now what if the third case, if the value is not equivalent to 0 and not less than 0, but it is less than 5? Then we throw a value of k, whereas k is a string. And what if it doesn't satisfy all the other conditions? We have the last condition or the last statement, which we throw a double value. Now we'll try to understand the program as it is. So if we throw v1 is an integer, so it comes out of the try block and it will be caught here with the matching catch block, which has an integer argument here. So this part will be executed perfectly. Now what if we are not throwing the value v1, we throw the value e. It comes over here, it tries to check whether the argument is a character. No, it's not a character, so it will skip this catch block and will check for another suitable catch block inside a program. So next catch block, where we have a character argument, matches exactly with the thrown value. So this will be executing in your statement or in your program. Yeah. What if we throw a string? So it doesn't match with the integer value, it doesn't match with the character. Then it comes to the third catch block, where it matches with the string variable here. So this one will execute. And what if we throw a double value? It doesn't match with the integer, it doesn't match with the character, even it doesn't match with the string. So it will come in search of a double value, but unfortunately we don't have a double catch block here. Instead of that, we have a new type of a catch block, which has 3 dots inside its arguments place. So what do we mean by this catch block? We call this catch block as CatchAll block, which means that it can catch any type of exception, irrespective of whether it's an integer or a character or a string or whatever data type, might be a class data type or whatever it is, it can catch it. So since we throw a value that is double in nature, it does not match with an integer, it does not match with a character, it does not match with a string, but it can match with a CatchAll block. So this one will be the final outcome. I hope you understand this program better. So we'll move into the execution part and let's see how it works exactly. So the programs, now let me save this program first. Yeah. So the program's name is 19_1. Okay, we are good to go. There is no error. We'll try to execute. So let's first give a value 0. Yeah. So it is an integer. So it matches with this one. So v1 value is thrown out. So once it is thrown out, so it will execute caught exception and the value is 0. So that's the output what you have got. Let's try another type of input. So let me give a value 3. So the value is 3, which is greater than 0, but it is less than 5. So this will be matching. So it will throw the value of k out. And as I told you before, it will match with the string catch block. And this will be your output. So it says caught exception, the value thrown is, the value of k will be printed, whereas the value of k is hello buddy here. So that should be the printed output. So that's what we have got here. So that's good. We'll try another one where we give a value that is greater than 5. So let me give it as 8. Now it moves into the final catch block. So when it is 8, it does not match with any of these statements. So it has got to match with the last else part. where we throw a double value. Doesn't match with the integer catch, doesn't match with the character catch, doesn't match with the string catch, but finally it moves into the catch-all block where we execute this one. So this is a default catch which can handle any type of exception. So that's why we put it at the last, so that if none of the catch block matches with the thrown request, this catch block can finally handle it. So that's how it goes on. Okay, the next program what we have here is about nested try catch block. So what is exactly meant by a nested try catch? It's very simple. When we have a try catch block inside another try catch block and so on, we call it as a nested try catch block. So it's exactly similar to nested conditional statements where we might have an if-else statement inside another if-else statement, and it works the same way. So let's try to understand with the help of this program. So here we have declared a variable v, which is integer, and then we request the user to enter value for v. So in the next line we have a try block and a matching catch block for that. Now what if the user enters a value that is less than 0? So it matches with this if condition, then it moves into this try block and it checks whether the value v is less than -5 even. So let's assume the user has given a value -6. So -6 is less than 0, it matches with this condition, so it comes inside this try block, and since -6 is less than -5, this condition is also true, so it goes for executing this statement. So once this statement is executed, the value of v is thrown out of this try block. So the compiler will search for the matching or the nearest matching catch block. So since we have a catch block which can receive a value integer, and according to the input what we have given, which is -6, is also an integer, so we'll be executing this part of the code. So let's try to see the output, how it works. Okay, we'll compile it. Okay, execute. Let's give a value of -6. So that's how it works. So -6 is less than 0 and even less than -5. So obviously we are throwing a value of v out of this try block, which is caught in this catch block since it matches with the argument part. And so we execute inner catch if block and the value caught is so and so. Let's try to make a small modification in this program. I'll put a character here and let's try to see what changes occurred in the output. We'll recompile it, go for the execution part. Okay, we'll give the same input -6. Now see the difference. The value of -6 matches with this if condition, so it moves into the try block here. It matches with this condition because -6 is less than -5, and it's gonna throw the value of v outside this try block. Once the value of v is thrown outside, it is going to search a suitable catch block, but since the first catch block has got a character parameter here, it does not match with the requirement because we are throwing an integer. So this catch block cannot catch the exception here. So the compiler will go and search for the next nearest catch block, which is over here. So since this matches with the value that is thrown, we'll be executing this part of the code. So that's how we got the output, outer catch block, and the value caught is -6. So from this program you can very well understand that once a value is being thrown, it has to be caught somewhere, and the catch block that is nearest to the try and also which satisfies the requirement of the thrown value will be executing the value, will be catching the value, and it will be executing the required output. Thank you for watching the video. I hope it is really useful for you. And if you like this video, please go on to the subscribe link and please subscribe. And I expect you to watch my future videos. Thank you.